Okay, as county clerk, I hereby call this meeting of the May 11th Land, Water, and Forest Resources Committee to order at 8:30 a.m. We will begin with roll call. Jesse Betcher.
Here.
Ed Peters.
Here.
Jason Weaver.
Present.
Mark Helwig.
Yep.
Brian Bissonette.
Here.
Kevin Sheptick.
Here.
Let the record show we have a quorum. For the record, let's show that this meeting has been publicly noticed to the news media as required by section 19.84 of the Wisconsin statutes. I'll open the floor now for nominations of the position of chair for the committee. Once the chair is elected, he will or she will conduct the election for the vice chair. A person receiving a majority of vote of members entitled to a seat shall be declared elected. This vote shall take place by voice vote. If no majority is reached, balloting shall continue, including all nominees, until majority is reached. At this time, I open the floor for nominations for the position of chair.
I nominate Jesse Betcher.
Mr. Helwig has nominated Jesse Betcher. Do we have any further nominations for the position of chair? Last call for nominations. Since we have one nomination, we'll call for a unanimous vote for the position of chair going to Jesse Betcher. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carried. Mr. Betcher, would you like me to conduct the election for the vice chair, or would you like to do that?
Go ahead.
Okay, we'll now open the floor for nominations for the position of vice chair. Following the same procedure, I will open the floor for nominations for the position of vice chair. Do I have any nominations?
I'll nominate Mark Helwig.
Oh, you. I was just gonna nominate you.
Do I have any further nominations for the position of vice chair? Last call for nominations for the position of vice chair. Since we have no further nominations, we will call for unanimous vote for Mark Helwig to assume the role of vice chair. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carried. Congratulations. Gentlemen, you may take over the meeting.
All right, thank you, Madam Clerk. At this time, we'll do the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Have one comment here. It looks like it's for your agenda. Yes.
Okay, any public comments at this time in the room? Anybody online for public comments? Before we go on, I'll just take a second to thank Brian for the nomination, and thanks for voting for me. This is, if I could only be on one committee, it would be this one. I have a real vested interest in our natural resources, land, forest, and water. I spend half the year in the woods, as a subsistence hunter, and I want to create a sense of trap line. So I believe in, preserving what we have, but also harvesting, managing through best management practices, using our natural resources, not just setting not to be touched. So I appreciate that. So we'll go on to consider approval of minutes from the previous meeting, assuming we've had a chance to look at those. Looking for Mark, you make
Make a motion to approve the minutes.
motion by Mr. Helwig. Do we have a second?
I'm sorry.
Second by Mr. Bissonette. Any further discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any nays? No. Okay, motion passes. Number 8, events, discussion and possible action. It just says Schwamigan 100. Who is that?
Yep.
That's you?
Yep, we've got a request for the Schwamigan 100 on June 18th. We have the appropriate insurance and the form filled out correctly. I recommend that you approve this item.
I'll make a motion to approve.
Have a motion by Mr. Bissonette, and I will second that. So for discussion, is there any fees associated with this?
No, we don't do the fees anymore. That was, we did that a couple years ago.
So they're just using this.
Yep, they just have to fill out the form and name us as insured, and we can approve it.
Okay, is there anything regarding like inspection, regarding cleanup and stuff like that after the fact, or?
Yeah, we generally take a look. Yeah, this race is pretty well run, so most of these we don't have any issues, but we'll take a look at after every event. So,
Any other discussion among the board members before I go to Ms. Freeland?
Just one question in the past. I just want, the Alliance is asking if that the ATV trails that this race will be going on will still be open during this time?
yep, they remain open. They can have some controls on crossings and things like that, but we won't close.
Okay, so they can't stop them from
No,
going, they might just slow
they
them
can hold
down?
them up, but yeah, they're not closed.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, any further discussion? If not, we have a motion and a second for the approval of the Schwamigan 100. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, say nay. Vote passes. Land Records and County Surveyor Department report. Who's the land records?
Dan Luger, and he's not present here today.
I hope there was nothing important. We don't have any other, he doesn't have a backup or assistant or anything?
Not that I'm aware of to give any kind of report there. I know they're pretty busy doing other surveying work throughout the county, so I'm sure there's nothing pressing of the matter for a report though.
Okay, move on to number 10, Sawyer County Forestry Department. Letter A, recreational court motorized.
Okay, the Alliance has been gearing up for a busy ATV season. I believe county trails might be opening Friday.
Yep.
And then Schwamigan is still for the 15th, I believe. We've been out working still on the ice storm cleanup for March. We have approximately 12 people so far who have turned in about 187 hours worth of time working on those, opening up those trails. We're not done. We still have some debris. We've been grading the Tuscobia. The Alliance purchased a grader, so we've been doing that. Gonna start working on signage and hopefully we'll be up and ready.
Thanks, Kathy. Those 187 hours, those are all volunteer or is there some?
Correct.
Okay. Do we have non-motorized? Anybody here for non-motorized? No. County forestry report.
Okay. Month of April, we had no active timber sales due to our extended breakup. Activity should be picking up pretty soon. The county road bans came off this morning. I'm not sure how the townships are following. I mean, some of those roads are still probably need a little bit of time, but things should be picking up here. So sold sales inactive on file with the inclusion of our bid opening last week. It's just over 5.2 million. Sale revenue for April, we did bring in just over 145,000. So our year-to-date timber sale revenue is just a little over 575,000. Sale revenue billed out for the month is 100,000 and change. Sale inspections, we didn't have any, so with no activity. We did have one track turned in. Recon is on target for the year. We're also still working on the Good Neighbor Authority, the contract with the state on federal lands. So that's starting to pick up as conditions in the woods have improved for sale establishment. Nothing else to report on any of the items. I did include a listing of all the grants that we did apply for that were due on April 15th for the ATV, UTV and snowmobile trails. We had a healthy amount of rehab projects on top of our normal maintenance items. Hatchery Park, we did start doing some cleanup out there from the winter and the ice storm, but we didn't have too much damage, but we did a little cleanup day there and things are ready for the season. The only other item we did complete a 103-acre prescribed burn in the winter block area called Parks Farm. We did that with DNR Forestry and Wildlife staff. Purpose of the burn with wildlife.
Who's that?
Just follow me.
Can we meet them or?
Yes.
Okay, thanks. Thanks for, were you done? or-
Yeah, that's all I have for now.
So a question on the Good Neighbor Authority.
Yeah.
I don't understand the 575 hours timber sale admin at $40,000. I don't
Yeah,
understand.
that's what we put out for the base contract for the year. So we have a list of projects that the state is contracting us to work on. So we give a higher number of hours to complete it, but that's kind of what the contract amount is capped out at. So we just do a formula based on hours of establishment, sale administration, things like that.
So that's money that we charge somebody or that's money
Yeah.
that we get paid?
That's what we would take in if we complete the 575 hours.
And then, so all of these grants, they are pretty substantial. When will we be notified if those get?
Usually the Off-Road Vehicle Council has a meeting in July or August where they'll review all the grant applications. And at that point, we'll get a preliminary approval or not approval. And then it goes into a review through the DNR. So we get final approval for these grants anywhere between October and February sometimes. So, but we usually get a pretty good idea in
July, August?
July, August. Yeah.
Okay, great. And then on your year-to-date timber sales at 575,000. That seems a little low compared to last year or the year before. Is that?
Yeah, we're a little bit off. You know, what we had this winter was we had a lot of mixed hardwood pulp on the contracts. So and those are generally a lower price. You know, our hardwood market's down, but we had a lot of contractors cleaning up a lot of the hardwood they had in the books. So there's a little bit more focus on that instead of relying solely on the higher price aspen. So.
Okay, so the year-end goal is right around 2 million, is that correct?
Yep, 1.85, 1.35.
So we're gonna have to do something to pick up a little bit.
Yeah, at this point, I'm not nervous about it.
Okay.
You know, it's
You're not
summer
nervous?
shaping up.
I'm not nervous.
Yeah.
Good, thank you.
Questions?
Yes, Brian.
Greg, so I was reading recently where there was emerald ash borer in northern Wisconsin.
Mm-hmm.
And so the DNR lifted that quarantine because we were quarantine county.
Yep.
Now, in the event that we were to get emerald ash borer in the county, can you, as our county representative, make this quarantine county? Or does the DNR supersede any kind of decision we have in our forestry management?
That's federal. That's DACCAP that does that quarantine, from what I understand. And we did have a ash borer that they found in the trap by Radisson probably 5-6 years ago.
Yeah, I remember that.
Yeah. So what happened is initially, there was just like a checkerboard of counties that were quarantined. And we finally made a push that the state as a whole is quarantined. So we can still transport county to county. It's just when we go out of state with products where things get a little bit difficult. But for a couple of years there, it was getting tough on, because, I think Douglas had one and we had one. And then there was a company like Taylor or something, so you just had this spattering of counties, and quarantine was real difficult to move with.
Wasn't the most recent one in Ashland County?
Yeah, I heard that, maybe like a month ago, I think they had one, and I didn't look real close, but maybe it was like right near Ashland, I thought, but yeah. And we've done some continued trapping that we've done ourselves in conjunction with the state. Those big purple boxes you see hanging. So we did that for several years after that hit in Radisson. We never picked up another.
I'm trying to remember what the article said that I read, that there was something that they were trying to mitigate the spread of it. I can't remember what the heck it was, if they were introducing something else or.
Oh, that I didn't hear, but I mean, what they've been recommending is, we harvest, some of our, our higher value ash areas and things like that. It's kind of just kind of a wait and see, and so far nothing's really happened. But.
Any other questions? If not, we'll go on to timber sale bid approval. Discussion and possible action.
Okay, we did have our bid opening on April 29th. I guess if you just take a glance at the bid summary, that kind of spells out kind of what we're looking at for the market for the next 6 months. But we usually key in on aspen and mixed hardwood. Our aspen pulp was steady. We just had a minor decrease. Mixed hardwood pulp was up by 15%. So, I mean, that's a good sign. That's kind of in a real worrisome market, as I've talked about every month here. So some of these other numbers, the increases are kind of skewed based on minimum bids from last fall and some higher bids on a few tracks this spring. We did have 3 whole tree chipping bids that were awarded, and they had some very high prices on. They have a set price on all the products on the sale. So we have some historically lower priced products that were bid higher just to accommodate for the whole tree chipping. But as a whole, it was a pretty good sale. We sold 21 out of the 26. Total soil value is 1.355 million. The 5 we didn't sell were kind of those mixed hardwood oak jobs that still seem to be impacted by the fears with the hardwood market. So we offered some extra ones to account for that. So this is a real good sale for us. Things are looking well. So for the bid result approval, all the contractors that were high bidder are known contractors we've worked in the past. No issues and no concerns. So my recommendation would be approving the high bid. It's not cheap.
I'll entertain a motion for approval of this.
May I ask a question?
Yes.
Are any of those town of Leonard sales bids, are any of those of the city trails?
No.
Thank you.
I will make a motion to approve.
Okay, we have a motion by Mr. Helwig and a second by Mr. Peters for the approval. Any other discussion? Just one question, Greg. So the pine, both red and white pine, are like really high. You're saying that's an anomaly. That's not going to be a trend. You don't think?
Well, I mean, the weighted average. Generally in the fall, we don't sell a huge volume of red pine, so there was a low cordage scattered on different sales. So a lot of those in November were minimum bids. So the spring bids kind of keys us into. I mean, there's only 4 tracks, but almost 2,000 cords of red pine. So it's high quality pine. So,
but I mean, even looking back 3 years, I mean,
it's yeah. It's significant. I don't know if it's gonna continue that way. Those prices were primarily through Buer Sawmill, and all the chatter I've heard over the last year or so is they're pretty desperate for wood to fill the yard. So
Okay.
They weren't gonna get outbid on anything, so.
Okay, we have a motion on the floor and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes. Okay, Sealy Trails update.
Yep, I don't have a lot to report right now, but we do have a meeting scheduled for next Monday, I believe at 1:30 at the warming house, Sealy Lines Warming House at that trail system. So we're gonna go over what options we have, some concerns that we've been talking about, and I guess we're gonna go from there, see what we can come up with.
Who's gonna be on the meeting, at that meeting?
I don't know who the rest of the representatives are, but if Mr. Brian could maybe answer that question.
Sue Bauer is going to be there, Tom Geyer is going to be there, Ron Bergen from Tampa is going to be there, myself, Forrester, Eric is going to be there,
I'll probably be there.
Lions will be represented.
1:30, when was that again, Greg?
1:30 at the Sealy, the warming house off of Old Buffalo.
Is that where we met? On Monday,
16th.
so I'll be there also.
At this time, I'll allow any public comments regarding Sealy Trails. I have a paper here from Mr. O'Brien. Go ahead, you have 3 minutes, ma'am.
My name is Barbara Bryan. I live on and own property on Old Double O Road in Lenroot Township. Some members of the committee have changed this past month, so I'm here to share what has been brought before this committee repeatedly since September of 2021 by myself and numerous other people. I'm here to speak with you about the logging currently scheduled and future logging contracts for the Sealy ski trails. I want to make it clear, I'm not opposed to logging. I support responsible logging. Currently the logging being done is in my mind not responsible. The Sealy trails are used by hundreds of people, residents and visitors, bikers, hikers, skiers, snowshoers, trail runners, and dog watchers. The Sawyer County touts itself as a mecca for the quiet sports, focusing on the beauty and quality of the many trails. Due to the way that the logging has been done, the beauty and quality has been ruined along a stretch of the trails. The Sealy trails are established and have clear signage, including separate signage by Canva. The Sealy Lions have built a beautiful warming house for visitors and residents to use to encourage and welcome the use of these trails. The decision to cut the trees along the trail and damage the trails is in direct opposition to welcoming and encouraging use. If you're not aware, logging has been done all the way up to and including the trails, impacting the use and quality of the trails, in addition to destroying the aesthetics of the trails. The trees provided shade in the summer and stopped the ski trail from melting and refreezing and being blown over in the sun. What has been done can't be undone. The section of trails is ruined for the rest of our lifetimes. Clear-cut logging destroys natural habitat and helps to create some new. Leaving a buffer on these trails is the best of both worlds. I've already submitted petitions with over 320 signatures who support a buffer on the trails, and I have more signatures collected and will be continuing to collect signatures now that biking season has started. Early on, some of the members expressed concerns about the loss of revenue if a buffer was left. And as we all know by now, the county will and has received quite a bit of additional funding, so this is no longer a concern for the county. I've read 2 quotes from the county's current and proposed 15-year plans. They both talk about the purpose of aesthetic management to minimize negative aesthetic impacts of timber harvesting. The goal of the County Forestry Committee will be to protect and to enhance the aesthetic value of this unique natural resource within reason. Your plans continue to say that the primary goal of management will be either scenic values for the conservation of the unique resource or for the betterment of the facility or recreational trail itself. Zone A classification timber will be managed to afford the greatest scenic potential for public enjoyment, but not to the detriment of the facility. There is a meeting of concerned citizens scheduled with Mr. Peterson coming up on Monday, as he has already stated. The committee is now able to fully implement and meet the intent of the county's comprehensive plan by directing there be a buffer on the trails. Please do the right thing and direct the county forester to leave a buffer on the trails in any and all future timber sales prescriptions. Other counties already do this, and they don't have our same financial resources. I encourage you to walk the trails and see the destruction. I've got pictures of the areas that we've talked about, and I'll be passing those out. Let's support the Silent Sport Committee, community, the tourism industry, and the logging industry. The county benefits from all three. Thank you for your time and your service to local government.
Thank you, ma'am. Okay, as she's passing those out, we'll go on to the letter E, the carbon tax credit update.
Okay, I've got a brief update, and I did have some conversations with Andy about this. We do have our proposal in legal review right now, but Andy and I did have some discussions on moving forward. I guess at this point, Andy, if you wanna speak a bit of what
Sure.
the plan might be.
Yeah, we've identified a legal counsel to review the proposal. Not gonna have them do too much on that. I have had past experience from my prior employment negotiating that same marketing agreement, the carbon marketing agreement, so I essentially know what the changes are that the legal counsel is gonna recommend. And I've talked to them about that, and they say contract I'm familiar with would be a good starting point for Sawyer County. So rather than spend money on legal costs now, I think the best thing to do is move ahead with having Blue Source do a proposal to the full board, so the full board can learn about the carbon credits and what they involve, how they work, and what the benefits to the county would be. And then depending on how that goes, we can then move ahead on looking at the marketing agreement and then taking that back to the board at a later date, or bring it to this committee, but then take it to the board if it moves ahead. So we do have Blue Source range to present at the county board meeting next week.
So, couple of concerns. One is, it sounds like we're just doing what's called a sole source contracting, or, in this case, it's a broker. So there's lots of carbon credit brokers out there. I know Blue Source is maybe the largest, or one of the largest, based on volume, but that doesn't necessarily equate to they're the one and only and the best. So I don't know if we've taken any steps to get any other estimates from any other brokers, because I was looking at some of their numbers, because we're looking at about 115,000 acres in the county, and they come up with 1.2 million credits, carbon credits, at about $12 each. So that equates to only about 10.43 credits per acre on average. And I know it's varying, wood, some have more, the oak stands are gonna have more than the hemper stuff. But over 40 years, that's only a quarter of 0.26 metric tons per acre per year. When you spread that over 40 years, which is it's less than half of what you probably have. Less than half. So I know that there's some concern with a 40-year commitment by, it's been brought to my attention by people that's 40 years, where we might really be limited on some things we can do with this acreage. So I just don't want to do anything in haste and be like, oh yeah, let's just sign this contract because they're offering us a pile of money. And it is a significant amount of money, but there's some risks associated, not risks, but consequences associated with that. And maybe we could be getting a lot more money. They said they're selling our tax credits at $12 each. But like Microsoft, they pay $20. They pay $20 per carbon tax credit across the board. So I just don't want to look at this money and just automatically sign stuff. I think we need to maybe just pump the brakes a little bit. I encourage having Blue Source give the brief to the full board, because there's a lot of people that have a lot of questions. Like me, I have a ton of questions, and that's why I started doing some of my own research on this to try to get a little bit smarter on this. So what you're saying is, are we scheduled in June? When is Blue Source planning to do
May, next week.
next week? They're doing a full brief to the
Yeah, they'll do the full presentation to the board on their proposal that they've submitted. And I think some of the questions or comments that you've made will be, you can ask them and they'll be addressed. Because just, I mean, like a couple things. It'll explain this, the volume. Part of it's based on accrued carbon. So you're getting, essentially you're getting credit for what you've managed forced up to this point. That's that's essentially sold over a period of years, and then it's going to drop down to a lower level that would be the sustainable growth going forward. So it's not a perfect per acre assessment of the entire county forest. They're going to look at
right. No, I realize that. I was just looking at like averages for, that's it's low.
and your the $12 of credit is what their pro forma is based on. If you enter into a market agreement with them, they'll actually take it to the market, and it'll be essentially a auction.
Yep.
Because I think
The last auction was about $13.50.
Well, they sent out a brief here that the last sales they've done have been 22.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Okay, that's good. I just,
But, yeah.
looking at other brokers, I know that there are other brokers who offer year-to-year contracts instead of just signing up right off the bat for 40 years. Maybe we could give some thought into doing a test run for a 1 year or a 5 year with some other broker and just see if it's going to be, if the juice is going to be worth the squeeze or not, instead of just jumping in both feet to 40 years. So, I just have some concerns about it. I'm not against it. I think we have valuable carbon credit offsets in our county forest that should be used to our advantage. I'm not saying that I'm against it, because I'm not at all. I just want to be smart about it, and I don't want to make a bad decision that we're going to regret in 5, 10, or 20 years. So that's all I'm saying. Any other comments on that?
I agree with you that I think we need to, like you say, pump the brakes a little bit and look like outside and see if there are other brokers that, like you say, year to year, or maybe 5 years or something. So as you say, that we're not locked in for a long period of time and kind of, like you say, test the waters in a sense. So I don't know how we would go about getting some other people involved and look into that.
So that was a question. When we had the presentation by Blue Source, what was the last meeting, right? Or 2 meetings?
It was a couple
Couple of meetings ago.
The question I had, because 40 years is a long commitment. Hopefully we'll all still be here in 40 years, but things change in 5 years and 10 years. And so that's why I asked the question, what happens if in the future, the board decides, this isn't working out for us, we want to get out of it? What's the consequence of it? Because there's always a consequence to everything. And so basically, any money that we have received, we would have to pay back. So that was a concern of mine. The 40 years was the concern, not so much paying back. Well, I mean, if it's 40 years, yeah, can worry about paying it back, because if you're 30 and things change, that's a lot of money to pay back.
Yeah, it wouldn't be paid back. We just have to pay off if the market crashes, we would just have to pay off the credits that we have sold. So it's not like the whole accrual. I'm not pitching for Blue Source for one another, but I think the approach that we're going, we are kind of slowing down. We're having the presentation again to get the board to discuss it.
there's not an approval schedule or anything like that, so.
So is this set in stone 40 years? That's the program term? Or is there, going back to their point, is there terms that we could accept that are less than 40 years?
I guess that's a good question for source. I mean, that's just what the proposal was 40.
That's their program, and that might be from the carbon registry, I'm not sure. Talk to other brokers and see if they've got different. I believe your contract is actually only 10 years with Blue Source. The 40 years is a monitoring requirement. So you sell your credits over 10 years. At the end of 10 years, you can start selling them yourself or use another entity to sell them. But the 40-year requirement is the monitoring of your forest inventory. And I think that's based more on the carbon registry, because Blue Source is the broker. They put the package together. They come in and do the growth assessments on the county forest during that due diligence period after you would sign on with them, as any broker would. And then at the end, they take that to the market and find the highest buyer for those credits. And that's registered just like a stock exchange almost, where there's a registry where your sale is listed and recorded. So then you have to report back over that 40-year period of the monitoring. And that's why they recommend like your first year proceeds from the credits to put them over here, don't spend them because that's your money to use for the 40 years to monitor the project. And you can hire them to do that or hire somebody else or some larger forest entities that are doing this have their own foresters trained in doing the 40-year monitoring.
I'm starting to remember stuff now, but what he's talking about, the 10-year, the 40-year stuff, so he's starting to scratch some dust away from the brain.
I can look at bring in some other brokers. I've been through this process, so I know how we made our decision to work with Blue Source. I don't know if you look beyond Blue Source or have discussions beyond that. But there are, from a year ago when I maybe first started working on this marketplace has heated up a little bit. So there's more brokers coming in. Ones I've seen coming in more so are maybe if you own land in Sarah County, my guess is you maybe have gotten a postcard already from a carbon broker saying, if you've got 1 acre or 40 acres or thousands of acres, we'll come in and you're going to start aggregating smaller parcels to take these projects to the marketplace. And I think that's where I've seen the most growth of it, is in those companies that want to work with smaller parcels. There seems to be Blue Source and maybe a couple others that work on larger public forests or industrial forests.
Thank you.
Any other comments on carbon credit?
The only other thing that I'd like to say is that we all received that anonymous letter. Thing of it is, I don't know. I'd like to know exactly what happens with the carbon credits that are bought by these large companies. If in fact we're truly not, if we're only benefiting monetarily here, but the exchange is that these big polluters are keeping allowed to pollute. Are we actually contributing to the problem? I just don't know. Like I said, I was trying to remember what that anonymous letter said.
Yeah, the individual did make up some good points.
I think
Whomever it was.
it was Jay that wrote the letter, but. I said it was a county employee.
Oh, yeah. See you looking at.
Had the initials JK at the bottom. I guess I have some similar concerns to Supervisor Bissonnette. What is Sawyer County getting paid for in terms of, and who's actually paying? If it is someone who is not making any good efforts to reduce their carbon emissions, are we indeed making it possible for major polluters to continue to fill the air?
So I think, go ahead. We might be saying the same thing. Okay, well, I think what has to be pointed out, though, is that this market is a voluntary market.
Exactly, yeah. That's what I was-
Yeah, these companies are seeking this out to, it's not a compliance market. I think California has a compliance market where you do X and you have to offset Y. This is all voluntary. This is for them to, it's a lot like our forest certification, so they can put a little stamp on a product and say, hey, we're working at it. And the way I've researched and looked at it, so it's, if it's $12 or the average is 14 right now, at some point the cost is going to increase, that they will have to decrease, their output, their blue, however you want to phrase it. So, but it's voluntary. It's not a required, offset that these companies are purchasing.
Right, so we were gonna say the same thing. So I hear what you're saying, Brian, and there are some companies who are heavy polluters, or they live in areas where it is mandatory that they have to reduce their carbon footprint, and they have to become compliant. And one way that they can do that is by buying these credits in county forests in northern Wisconsin. None of these companies that Blue Source is selling to are those that are forced to do it. It's these companies who want to feel better about themselves or whatever, like Microsoft, like Bill Gates personally, because he's got a lot of money, he wants to feel good about himself. He pays $600 per carbon credit offset. $600, we're talking $12, $13. So totally voluntary. He's like, well, if I'm going to fly my private jet, I want to feel good about myself, so I'm going to offset by paying for these carbon credits in whatever forest in Montana or Washington State. So we're selling. Blue Source is going to broker only to these companies who are doing it voluntarily. They're not required to. They're doing it with good faith, and it might just be to make themselves feel better, but it is. So that's a valid point.
Well, that's good to know.
Yeah, Jay.
Yeah, thanks for
How
bringing
can we
that
find
letter
their
up.
gates?
Yeah. I just have, I guess, one comment to make, and I didn't write that letter, I didn't even know what you're talking about. But this is a voluntary program right now. It was to say that in 5 years it becomes mandatory, yet we've already sold the credits. And instead of getting the $12 or $13 per acre credit, now that it's a mandatory, the market's jumped up and now it's $30, $40. So just consider that. I mean, yes, there's a lot of money available right now, but there could be more if you wait a little bit longer too.
Yeah, there could be, but one thing with the compliant or mandatory credits, those sell for much lower. They're in the $4 to $7 range.
Okay.
So I don't know how that works, but they don't go through these auctions like they do for the voluntary guys. So when you're forced to do it as a company, you somehow get lower price, like a third of the price, based on the research you got. So I hear what you're saying, and I think it is a hot market right now, and the price is probably going to go up from what it is now. It's probably not going to go down in the foreseeable future.
Nothing's coming down.
Yeah. But, okay, I think this is good discussion. And now looking forward to the full briefing from to the county board. Any other comments? Jason Weaver, do you have any comments on this?
No, I'm actually just learning about it and interested in how it is. Understanding that it's voluntary makes that more appealing, because the companies don't have to pay anything, honestly. They're just trying to do what's better. As long as we can still manage the forest and cut when we need to cut, I'm open-minded to it.
Okay, thank you. All right, we'll move on then to letter F, in our forestry report.
Okay. Cedar Brook Dam, Jacob Druffner, I had some email correspondence with him. He made contact with, or tried to make contact with Mr. Marple. He did not receive a reply. He also contacted the nonprofit conservancy organization interested in acquiring the property, and Mr. Marple has not been communicating with them either, so the DNR will be discussing the next steps. If the landowner is not willing to bring this matter to a resolution. Fisheries surveys are currently underway on 9 bodies of water. Lake Hayward and Chippewa Flowage have been completed already. Parks and Rec docks have been put in at area boat landings. Kyle Marinoff is working with the Sawyer County ATV and Snowmobile Trail Alliance to get signage updated on the Scobia Trail. Property reports are available for, they call them annual property implementation plans and monitoring reports. That would be for the Flammable River State Forest in our area. They identify major scheduled and completed forest and habitat treatments, infrastructure, and developments. They can be shared, or they're available online for review with the following attached link that I have on the report. Before I turn it over to Josh, prescribed burning, like Greg mentioned, there was a burn at the Parks Farm site, and just in the month of April, there were 2 fires in Sawyer County. One was from a down power line, and the other was from debris burning. Compared to last year, there was 13. Statewide, in the month of April, there were 219 fires, totaling 415 acres burned. Compared to last year, there were 514 fires for a little over 1,600 acres burned. The largest fire to date this year was in Sauk County. That was 50 acres in a marsh. And since I've written this report, the activity's really picked up, and I'll go over that next month. So I'm going to turn it over to Josh. There were some questions from last meeting regarding CWD baiting and some other things also. So here's Josh Spiegel, our wildlife biologist.
Yeah, thanks, Roy, and thanks for the board allowing me to come here and speak today. So Roy kind of mentioned that there were some questions coming out of April's meeting about the CWD process that the DNR kind of operates both at the local and statewide level. So just a brief update on that. So when it comes to our different work processes, we have different committees that sit together and kind of make decisions statewide, issuing guidances, etc. So we do have a CWD committee that meets throughout the year. The general time frame is, you know, if we kind of start in the peak point, which is sampling during the deer hunting seasons, the fall and early winter time frame. Hunters go out, obviously harvest their animal and choose whether or not they'd like to sample said animal. So then they work with the DNR through drop-off points or direct employee contact to get that animal sampled. And all those samples are collected throughout the hunting season, ultimately kind of wrapping up by the back end of January, early into February for testing. At that point in time, they review all the data, see what it kind of looks like, if there's any new area detections that have come about, and then they lay out summer meetings for the process moving forward. So they'll be getting into that process right now, that CWD committee, to start looking at what the focus will be for the fall of 2022. So kind of at the statewide level, that determines, you know, where they're looking at for testing reasons. Here locally, Sawyer County, again, we did our first year of what we call hunter surveillance testing. So we offer this option through voluntary drop-off. Nothing is mandatory within Sawyer County. This is on the back end of 2 years of what we call more, not intensive, but more structured CWD sampling. So we usually go through about a 6 to 10 year window, somewhere in that ballpark, depending what these committees are looking at, where we sample a little bit stronger in a 2 year time frame. Those 2 years that we did were 2019 and 2020. No CWD was detected within Sawyer County through those 2 time frames. And in 2021, we additionally did not find any CWD in Sawyer County. So we're continuing forward as of right now, unless something occurs over the summer months, which there's still the random samples that come in through egg damage testing, car killed deer, or any other miscellaneous calls. You know, someone calls a deer may not be acting right. We usually take samples out of everything we collect, barring a viable sample, not rotting, decaying, etc. So if something new was to pop up, we'd then kind of start at that point moving forward. But as of right now, the plan would be for 2022 within Sawyer County to have hunter surveillance testing again. So in the 2021 season, we had drop-off points at both the Hayward and Winter DNR service centers, as well as placing staff phone numbers available to the public if they wanted to have those. So it's kind of open-ended. We let the hunters decide whether or not they want to contact us on that front. As for the baiting side of things, obviously, the state itself, we can't take a strict approach because it is a regulatory agency, and we cannot comment one way or the other when it comes to baiting. For a county that operates and does not meet one of the criteria for a baiting ban, which would be being adjacent to a CWD positive county with a location within 10 miles, or having a CWD positive animal found within that county. It's kind of open-ended. That would be through legislative action to do statewide bans, etc. So we're kind of, I don't want to say at the mercy, but we're tied to administrative rules and statutes that are set by the state of Wisconsin. So it's not just a decision we can say there's no baiting occurring right now type thing. So I guess with that, I know there are some questions. All this is available on the DNR website under the CWD page. So same kind of thing like you guys have to go through. All of our committee meetings are public notice. So any of those CWD meetings that have occurred throughout the last handful of years are all posted online. Anyone can see those at any time. Those lay out kind of the rough plans and processes that move forward every single year.
Thanks, Josh.
Yeah.
Hey, Roy, Mr. Morpole, so he's in an assisted living facility out in San Diego, so I don't know.
Correct, and I've dealt with Mr. Marple a few times. From a wildlife aspect, he's called me a whole bunch, and when this whole process started a couple of years ago, he was calling regularly and trying to speak with local staff. And I want to say he hasn't called me now in probably 7 or 8 months. And the last I heard, he was in fairly poor physical condition.
I guess what I'm getting at is, I know that there's some options available where you guys have authority to take action. It seems like you could have done that in May of a year ago. And I know that a lot of things, it's kind of on the back burner, there's other things, but it sounds like, according to what I understand, you guys are authorized to move forward with a couple of different options, so moving it or transferring it over to a nonprofit or something like that. So I'm just anxious to see that something happens to that. Instead of like, well, we send another letter and call it again and no response. Because that's kind of what it's been.
I mean, they've been working with us as best as we can.
Yeah.
I mean, he's been made aware of some grant opportunities.
Yeah, no, I know that he's aware of everything. He's taking no action. So I think I'm not telling you guys, I mean, I think it's everybody.
Yeah, and I think the big thing with that is we've just been used as resources. So we don't have that authority. Other individuals within the DNR do. And we've all been in contact, and they're trying to work through this as best as they can to avoid any type of litigation. Because that's the big thing is they've talked about, basically worrying about handling situations through the court process. And that's what they're trying to avoid, because that's when stuff gets really messy. I can reach out to Jake further. Myself and Max Bolter have been kind of tied into that process with the fisheries and water side of things.
Yeah, I talked to Max, but okay. Any other questions for DNR?
Yeah, I just under the fishery surveys, those are all the ones that are being done out of the Hayward office,
Correct.
because there are other ones being done in Sawyer County out of Park Falls.
Now, I know like on the flowage, there were multiple locations within the DNR that were helping out with that survey, because they did the entire flowage. I think it was what, 11 crews
Yeah.
statewide that were up here.
Yeah.
And that was a 10-year comprehensive survey. So I think what you're talking about is the Park Falls office comes down and does like Connors Lake and
Connors,
I think a
all
couple
of them
down there.
in the Flammable River State
Yeah.
Forest.
But I'm not entirely sure what their survey process is for this year. And that's not Max either, so we'd have to reach out to Jeff on that.
Yeah.
The only other comments that I would have, that was kind of my update per request. So from wildlife side in the month of April and prior to this meeting here, we have been completing our survey timeframe. So the big thing right now is grouse and woodcock surveys. NHC, our natural heritage, kind of handles the non-game animals. They're out there doing a lot of the non-game surveys, your owls, eagles, different other species like that, frogs, handling all that stuff. We did just move 14 elk in the month of March from the greater Ladysmith area, it'd be just the south end of the Flammable River State Forest, that were causing egg damage, and we released them within Sawyer County in the very northeast corner up near Clam Lake, what we call an acclimation pen. So we held them for a 7 weeks time frame. We just opened the door on Monday morning, and those 14 elk have since left the pen and kind of milling in that greater Clam Lake area. That's a pretty common process we have. We've used it to disperse animals to new locations within elk range habitat, and we've used it to take animals out of problem areas and reacclimate them with larger groups of elk. So that was kind of one of the processes we've done there. We're getting ready here. We're going to be starting May 21st with elk calf searching. That's going to run for about a month straight. It's going to be a 3-year process to attempt to gather mortality information and survival information of those calves. We're hoping to collar about 20 to 25 a year for the next 3 years to help identify different needs that normally the population, but our population model needs to project our elk population estimates. So I know there's probably a lot of folks in this community that are very familiar with that, as that process was done pretty heavily from about the year 2000 to 2013. So it's a pretty strong volunteer process. We use a lot of volunteers on a daily basis, set up a schedule, and those people meet us in Clam Lake in the morning and disperse to different locations on a given day. So, yeah. Go ahead.
Josh, speaking of elk, because I was going to bring that up, what's the protocol in the event that CWD is detected in one of the Clam Lake herd because they herd up more substantially than a whitetail? And so what would be the protocol in that event?
Well, the protocol would be to directly monitor animals. So we don't have anything in place yet because we don't know how it goes through elk. You know, we haven't had it here. The general protocol would be any animal showing any CWD signs or symptoms would be removed and sampled. So we do sample every elk, again, that is viable, including all the elk that came from Kentucky. So any elk that was transported from the state of Kentucky, it was 150 elk, has to be sampled within a 5-year window of the last year. So any full carcass, typically what we do when we do an elk necropsy is do a field necropsy, look at the animal. If there's anything suspicious, we'll take a sample, pull lymph nodes, pull the obex, which is the base of the brainstem for CWD sampling, and submit that. These Kentucky animals were required to take the entire carcass to a veterinary diagnostic lab. So up here, the closest one is University of Wisconsin Veterinary Diagnostic Lab in Barron. So we take that whole animal, we'll basically bring this giant otter sled in, get it all in, and haul it out of the woods. It's not very fun. We've had to do that. We had to take one out about 1.25 miles uphill. Unfortunately, it was the whole carcass. Fortunately, it was extremely underweight and weighed less. But usually we look at those signs and try to figure out what's going on there. So unfortunately, we don't know how fast CWD sets in on these animals. You know, whitetail in general is a lot shorter lived species. So front to end, the impacts will likely be occurring faster. But again, any elk that we do have in mortality, including healthy elk, you know, something that hunter harvested, for example, an animal that wouldn't have died without the assistance or a vehicle collision. Those animals are all sampled for CWD and we haven't found any yet. So we're still working through the full protocol, and our state vets and the CWD committees have been looking out west to different places that do have CWD and what their protocols look like for those situations.
Okay, moving on then, zoning conservation department, county report.
Yeah, the tree sale is set to occur this weekend, Friday and Saturday. We got trees coming in tomorrow, so staff will be sorting those out. We've done this tree sale program as long as I've been here, and people seem to love it. Get some really nice, healthy trees for a very cheap rate. So other office staff, this is our busiest time of the year. We got multiple site visits occurring. We did have a lift system break on the Price Dam, which is the dam that controls Lake Winter. It's the mechanism to actually lift the gate. It's that clutch assembly that's broke. So we have someone scheduled to take a look at it. Unfortunately, they don't know what's wrong with it until they even look at it, and they were going to charge a pretty good rate to even just look at it. But we're kind of caught in that, and we need to have it operating and functional. So this might be something we'll have to bring back as a budget line item amendment. But as of right now, the only saving grace or semi-saving grace is that any occurring cost with that would be 50% would be on the town of Winter though as well. So fingers crossed that when we have the repair individual come look at it, that it's an easy fix and we can get that back up and functioning. But I will keep you up to date on that. The bids have gone out. The bid submittal has gone out for the Upper Bruni River Dam repair replacement project. We've actually now extended the deadline for those. It says on here May 13th, and I just talked to the engineer on Monday. We're going to extend those back to May 25th. In that we can tabulate the bid and get that bid information to you by the next June Land, Water, Forest Resource Committee. So in June, I would be looking for approval of the contractor for the bids that are submitted. By giving us that extra week and a half time frame, it's our hope that we're actually going to be picking up a potential couple more contractors that'll be submitting bids. So and that's all I have on my end right now.
Any questions for Jay?
Schedule is still to draw down the Lake Loretta.
Yeah,
down
in late August. Yeah. We'll see when we get these bids back is when the contractors can start. We're somewhat at the mercy of the contractors. Now we had put that proposal in there, but it might be something where they're not able to get certain elements for the gates, so they'll say that they can't complete it in that time frame, which means we'll probably end up pushing this back a year. So we'll know more on May 25th as to how the bids look. So.
Yeah, and I guess my other concern would be with regard to Price Dam. Are there alternative ways of moving those gates so that in case they need to be adjusted?
There is. So it's only one gate that isn't functioning. So we're able to still let water out of that. There is an emergency kind of relief system on that still. So even if the clutch assembly isn't working, but it's a considerable weight and a considerable amount of time to even raise it very, very slowly. So without having this clutch assembly working, it's basically an unfunctioning gate. Yes, could someone sit out there for an hour and crank on a hand level to raise it up a foot? Yes, but that's really not the intent of what that gate's designed to do. So I think that individual is going to be looking at it this week already. So again, I'll report back on that for next month to see what progress is made.
I have a couple questions. Have you heard from the BIA on the Billy Boy Dam?
I have not. I know I kind of gave that project to Tim to move forward with it. And it sounded like that easement isn't scheduled to be due until, I think it's the early part of 2024. But we wanted to, get the ball rolling on it, just that we weren't stuck in the.
You're dealing with the BIA, you have to.
Right, okay.
So-
And last time the BIA ended up charging the county, I think it was like $2,000 or $5,000 for the easement. And, that's kind of our hope, is that we're the ones maintaining and operating the dam, to charge the county an easement to go in there and operate it. We're hoping we can work out a deal with them, but
Well, they're required under the Code of Federal Regulations to get fair market value, so that, there's no getting around that. So,
okay.
Then the other question is, how are you doing on your building permits and sanitary permits? Are they up with as much development as going around?
Yeah, so last year was our busiest year in the last 15. This year, we are slightly behind those numbers of last year, but I think that's anticipated with the cost of construction right now. I think last year, the saving grace, even though cost of construction materials was way up, the saving grace last year is that interest rates were still very low. Interest rates now are starting to climb, and the price of lumber and materials has only come down a little bit from last year. So I think there's some hesitation out there with people wanting to pull the trigger on larger new additions or new builds. So we are a little bit behind on permit numbers, but that also could be contributed to the late spring that we had. And we didn't really have a spring. We went straight from winter to summer here. But with road bans coming off, we'll see what happens here in the next couple weeks. It's usually our busiest time of the year. But it doesn't look like it's really slowing down that much. Maybe a little bit from last year, but still above average.
I was gonna say, even though we're behind last year, I mean, going back.
Right, and last year was kind of an anomaly, so.
Yeah, and so on an average year, we're still above average.
I would say so, yeah.
Any other questions for Jay? If not, we'll move on to the USDA report.
USDA right now is fully open at the Lady Smith office. There's just a few dates to remember, like May 13th, Conservation Reserve Program, CRP, deadline is coming to an end finally, which nobody will sign up in Sawyer County for, I don't know why, but May 20th, deadline for EQIP applications. May 30th, the office will be closed for Memorial Day. May 31st, market assistant loan for prior year, like corn, soybeans, and oil seeds. Applications are due. And then on May 31st, non-insured crop disaster assistance program, which is NAP, the deadline for nursery crop is for 2023 is due for the future here. And then the farmers are just starting to get going now. They've been waiting for the road bans to come out to get their pits emptied. I know there's been a couple of little guys down by me that have been pinched down there because of being on roads. But they're getting in the fields finally now. Hopefully they'll keep continuing.
So that CRP, you said that Sawyer County doesn't participate.
Well, it's the landowners don't get in it for some reason. I don't understand why, because if you're not farming no more, and you're just gonna let your land sit, you can get up to like $120 an acre. Just let your land sit there, but leave it in grass or whatever.
Yeah.
But nobody participates in the program, no. So
What do you suppose it is? They don't know about it?
I think that's probably the biggest problem.
What can we do to advertise that?
Well, we do send newsletters out through the USDA, but they still don't participate. Like Rush County, they only have 3 people in the whole county that participated down there. So it's something that happens more down south for some reason than up here.
There's other requirements though, correct? Like if you sign up for that, then you have to open up your land to recreational hunters and stuff like that. Is that true?
That's not true.
That's a different program.
That's a different program.
So what are the drawbacks of it?
I don't know. That's the $1 million question. People just don't get involved. Because like I say, you can sign up and it's usually from 10 years. Well, it starts out at 5, 10, then like 15 years. And, the government keeps adding to it, but nobody signs up.
What's the minimum acreage for that? For like 40 acres or?
I want to say 10 acres. I'm not for sure, but I think
Yeah.
it's 10.
Okay. I have a question about equip. If you miss the deadline, you can still submit applications. It's just going to apply to the next funding cycle. Is that correct?
You can file for a late application, but you got to pay for it. If you
Okay.
file when the applications are due, there's no charge for it.
Okay.
Then it's brought to our committee and we decide if we want to proceed with it or not. And we look at the reasons why you were late. Is it medical or something like that, So, yeah. And we try to accommodate the farmers or people that want to get into the programs.
Any other questions for Kevin? If not, CO report. Big Brian?
Well, we just, we're starting our spring operations for our stocking program. Hopefully, we're excited that this year we'll be able to extend the wildlife for stocking. So operations on the way there. The only other thing I've been dealing with continually over the last week and a half are bear complaints. In fact, I just looked at my phone. I got 2 more where they're breaking into garages now. I've had 4 complaints in the last 3 days with bears getting in, destroying property. So, outside of that, I don't have much to report. Other than we do it our best to assist everybody that lives within the reservation boundary with air problems. So not easy on the big ones. So.
All right, any questions for Brian? Okay, then we'll move on to number 12, future agenda items. Anybody have anything for future agenda items? I think there were a couple things we already discussed.
I'm assuming carbon tax will be on there next month again.
Yes. We'll all be a lot smarter after.
That'll be kind of a continual thing, though.
I think it will be, yeah, because I mean, talking millions of dollars and there's going to be some emotion involved because some people are totally against it. And I think, yeah, we'll cut that on there. If there's nothing else, we run number 13, correspondence, reports, and from conferences and meetings or other matters for discussion. Kathy, any
Hayward Lakes and economic development. The Alliance purchased counters where our goal is to get some accurate data on both ATV usage and snowmobile usage. Pretty excited about getting those figures. We bought them over winter, although it's been a learning process. They're very touchy, so we go out and put them up and then come back and get them, and there's nothing recorded. So because the beam shoots out like 10 feet, you have to have it placed just perfectly. So they're very touchy, and we have to put them in an area that bottlenecks traffic, which is difficult to find on our trail system. So we're learning as we go, but we think we have it figured out. In fact, I'm going out to put counters out tonight. So we'll hopefully have some data. In those committees that I'm on, housing has been an issue, of course, with we have a lot of people that want to come to the area, but housing continues to be an issue. So for visitors and for workers, that's about all I can really report on.
Great, thanks. Anybody else have anything? If not, we are adjourned. Thank you.